Hi everyone, thanks for watching another video about this Comptia Security Plus certification. Today we're going to look at some exam questions. We will go over them together and hopefully we can learn from it. This way you have a good idea what you can expect on the exam. Thanks for watching, see you soon. Hi everyone, thanks for checking the second video on this Comptia Security Plus certification. Let's move on with test number 2. So let's go all over these questions, and in the end you can see if I was right and wrong and what the correct answer was. Privacy filter, protective overlay, computer angle, shoulder, yes, true. An email message containing a warning related to a non-existent security threat, asking user to delete files, falsely identified as malware. Phishing, impersonation, host. Phishing is not. It's an impersonation, I think. Virus hoax. Prompting them to share the message with others would be an example of impersonating as. That's a difficult one. Definitely not phishing. Also not phishing. Either one of those two. But I never heard this, so I think it's an impersonation. No, I think it's a virus hoax still. What's a watering hole? I have to check real quick. Okay, attack strategy in which an attacker observes which websites an organization uses frequently and then infect those with malware. Okay, so that definitely has to do with websites. I was cheating a little bit, but I had no idea what watering hole attacks are. So websites. An attacker impersonates a company's managing staff member to manipulate a lower rank, disclosing confidential data. Urgency, authority, and intimidation. While conducting web research. Fake reviews. Authority, urgency. Urgency. Yeah. Purchasing decision, there's a certain urgency. Web research. An attempt to flood bandwidth or resources of the target system become overwhelmed. The DOS attack, denial of service attack, as opposed to the simple DOS attack that usually are performed from a single system. A distributed denial of service attack uses multiple compromised computer systems to perform attack against a target. Zombies or botnet, that's true. Which of the following attack rely on intercepting and altering data sent between two network hosts? Well, you're setting between a client and a server, so you're in the middle. So a man in the middle attack. A type of exploit that relies on overwriting content of memory. It's a buffer overflow. Entry field of web forms lacking input validations are vulnerable to what kind of attacks? Those are not replay SQL injection attacks, because input fields, web forms always go directly to the database. Name, street address, telephone number, it's all stored in the database, and SQL is a database language. So injection attacks, yes. Cross-site scripting. Common target. Dynamic web pages, not static web pages, because that's kind of like read-only, but dynamic web pages. So you enter certain input, and the web server gives you something back in return that's called dynamic, and you only can do cross-site scripting against dynamic web pages. Cross-site script forgery is a security exploit that allows request forgery. Infecting a website. Yeah, I'll go for true. Which type of attack allows tricking a user into sending unauthorized commands to a web application? Unauthorized commands. Cross-site scripting. IRC, CSR. I think those two. Which of the following facilitates privileged escalation attacks? System vulnerability, this one. I think this one, because you can either manipulate somebody by getting more privileges, or it's just a simple misconfiguration of a system or application. An attacker managed to associate gateway, yes. ARP poisoning. Not DNS poisoning, but ARP poisoning, yes. Amplification effect. Amplifier is usually, I think this one. Zero-day attack is an attack that's just out there, that hasn't been patched yet, and that's unknown to the person on the other side protecting the system. Distributed denial of service attack is something else. Brute force attack application. I think it's DDoS. Brute force attack is man-in-the-middle attack. I think it's a DDoS. Remapping a domain name to a rogue IP address is an example of what kind of exploit. Domain name. DNS poisoning. Domain name servers poisoning. Domain hijacking. Remapping. I think DNS. Yes, I think DNS or URL hijacking, but I think it's DNS poisoning. I hope it's right. The term domain hijacking refers to a situation in which a domain registered due to unlawful actions of third party loses control over his or her domain. Hijacking. I don't think so. Why would it call that? That would be, the term. I don't think so. Which of the terms listed below refers to a computer security exploit that takes advantage of vulnerabilities in a user's web browser application? Man in the browser? Man in the middle Man in the middle. It has to be something with browser in it, so I go for this one. A type of attack aimed at exploiting a vulnerability that is present in already released software but unknown to the software developer is called a zero-day attack. Okay, a replay attack occurs when an attacker intercepts data and tries to use this information later to impersonate the user to obtain authorized access to resources on a network. True. A technique that allows an attacker to authenticate to a remote server without extracting a clear password. Authenticate. Hash. So it's not without a clear text. Pass the hash. It has to do something with hashing. That's for sure. Rainbow table is for really cracking passwords. Hash correlation, I don't think so. I think it's this one. Pass the hash. In computer security, the term click checking refers to a malicious technique of tricking a user into clicking onto something different from what the user thinks they are clicking on. Click checking. I think that's true. In that way, you click on something, but you should always look at the URL in the here in the left, here below, what kind of URL you go into. But in this way, you click on something and you go to a malicious website. So I think it's true. Last question: in a session hijacking attack, the hacker takes advantage of the session ID stored in digital signature key is row. I think in a cookie. If the session ID is even stored in the cookie, is that true? Could it be stored in the cookie? I think it makes sense. Digital signature. Difficult question. Let's see how I did. Privacy filter, true. Okay, non-existent. It was a virus hoax and not an impersonation. So I guessed right, virus hoax. Yes, we did this. Watering hole attacks refer to websites. Wow, this is also good. Nice. Urgency, authority, and intimidation. Alright, this one isn't correct. I missed a few. Oh, I missed your answer. Is this wrong answer? Missed. Oh, this was correct, and this was correct. Was it? Oh, this is wrong. These three: scarcity, familiarity, and trust. I only got trust. Scarcity. Yeah, you're looking for a solution. Familiarity and trust to a certain degree. Okay. Conducting a web search, better purchasing decision. I missed one. I missed consensus. Okay. And the answer I gave was not right, so it was only consensus. Okay, now flood the bandwidth of resources of targeting system. DOS attack. Denial of service. DOS, you have a DDoS. That was with a botnet. Yes, true. Man in the middle attack. You have a client and you have a server and you sit in between, and that's called a man in the middle attack. Okay, an exploit. That's buffer overflow. We're talking about the random or read access memory, random access memory. The RAM memory has to do with buffer overflow. Now I have to know what it stands for. Just a second. RAM standing for. Come on. Just a second. Computers. Random access memory. Okay. Buffer overflow. Yes. Okay. SQL injection attacks was correct. This cross-site scripting can only be done against dynamic web pages, not static web pages, because you want interaction from the web server, which makes it a dynamic web page. This was false. Security exploit. So this was false. This was true. Correct answer. Your answer, okay, was false. Okay. This was correct. CSRF. This was not correct, and this, okay. Now, not going very well so far. I missed this one. Vulnerability. Of course, could also be a vulnerability. It doesn't only need to be misconfiguration. So social engineering, a vulnerability, and a misconfiguration. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Okay, ARP poisoning was good. ARP has to do something about computers talking to each other, and when MAC address that's a hardware address is binded to an IP address of the default gateway, then you can basically you're ARP poisoning because network stuff. Yeah, it was good. Anyway, let's move on. Application DDoS was good. Almost did brute force, but brute force has to do something with passwords, and this is an actual attack to overwhelm a target system. So they see here amplification. Okay, remapping, and yes, DNS poisoning because domain name, let's say this examcompass.com refers to a certain IP address, and that's DNS, the server's DNS, so DNS poisoning. Okay, domain hijacking. Unlawful, okay, doesn't really make sense for me, but it does. So you can lose your domain name if you are you registered to it. It's your domain name, but you do unlawful actions of third parties. So let's say, for instance, you are having a website and you're being hacked, and from that website stuff happens that you're not over in control. Then you can even lose your domain. Wow, that's new to me, but it's good to know. Okay, now moving on. Which of the terms? Computer advanced vulnerabilities in the web browser. MITB. I have to know if that's man in the browser. I think, right? Man attack. Standing for man in the browser. Yes, correct. Okay, type of attack aimed at exploring vulnerabilities. 0-day attack was correct. This is correct. This is correct. Patch the hash. Hey man, patch me the hash. I mean the hash. Anyway, moving on. Correct. Click jacking. Session hijacking. It's stored in the cookie. The session ID of that session is stored in the cookie. Okay. So a hacker can look inside your cookie, get the session ID, and maybe take over the session. Interesting. Okay, total questions 25. Correct answered 19. Okay, it's not bad, also not super good, but this is actually the first time I make these tests and we go over them together. And as I learn, you learn, hopefully. So thanks for watching, and we see you in the next video.